Mark Schaefer, first of all, thank you so much for joining me on the AI 6 podcast.
I'm happy to see you again.
Well, listen, you are a prolific author, but also a marketer that I would say is ahead of the trends and keeps the rest of us up to date. What was the motivation apart from the speed of evolution of AI for your latest title, Audacious?
Well, when I write, writing a book is a big risk. It's a huge commitment. It's a huge sacrifice, and it's the riskiest thing you can do for your personal brand because it's not like a blog post or a tweet where you can take it down if you change your mind. And so I have to be sure. I have to be sure that there's something going on in the world, that there's a problem or a question that people have that is chronic and persistent and difficult. And if I could figure it out, it would make a good book. It's something that could really help people. And I think today, the biggest question for all of us, the biggest challenge for all of us is really this existential idea of where do we fit in this world where we have this abundant, free super intelligence nipping at the heels of our skill sets, nipping at the heels of our careers. We've got these bold statements from someone like Sam Altman saying that 98% of the marketing jobs are going to go away. And so I needed to figure it out. I needed to reflect deeply on what is the role of humans and humanity in this new world. And it's something I've been writing a lot about, thinking a lot about. And specifically, this book talks about the role of marketing. What is uniquely human that we'll be able to own, that we'll be able to leverage even in this world where AI dominates.
And the title of the book, Audacious, how did that come around?
Well, the main idea of the book, I don't sugarcoat things, right? I say, look, if you're competent, you're in trouble because AI is competent. AI is more than competent. And competent is ignorable. And we live in a business world and a marketing world where in some ways competency, just being competent, has sort of become part of the culture. We're competent and we're boring because we don't want to upset things. We don't really want to change things. If we're boring, that's easy to get it approved by the legal department. We don't really want to, challenge the structure of an industry. We want to delegate as much as we can to an advertising agency that kind of knows how to do one thing, and that's what they've always done. So the overarching idea of my book is that you've got to reach deeper. If you just are doing competent work, AI is going to eat you alive. And so where are the places in the world we can be audacious? And how do we do that? So I got to talk to some of the greatest creative minds in the world. And I said, give me your secrets. How do you rise above the noise in this pandemic of dull? And so the book is filled with hundreds and hundreds of ideas and case studies. And it's an easy framework that's accessible. It makes sense. It's not complicated. That anybody in any company of any size can use this today to think through where are we today and how do we get on a path that leads to something a little bit more disruptive than where we are today.
And it's quite remarkable that, the tagline for your book is How Humans Win in an AI Marketing World. I really never thought in my own lifetime that I'd be competing against supercomputers and robots. And obviously, the new generation of marketers graduating from colleges will are living in a different world and will naturally have a different skill set. But I fear that a lot of us experienced marketers will be paralyzed with fear. And even that, salient advice of be audacious. What's your unique selling point? How can you bring critical thinking and creativity? But I think there's a lot of fear out there. Did you pick up a sense of that during the research for the book?
Well, I think everyone you talk to, when you ask them about AI, they say two things. They say, wow, this is exciting, and wow, this is terrifying. And if you've immersed yourself in this world, I mean, I think that's accurate. I think we live in a world that's magical. I mean, really, magical. I mean, I say, you know, oh my goodness, every single day when I see what AI is doing today. And so this is something that we have to embrace. Even if you're fearful, you have to immerse yourself in the world. You have to learn about it. You have to push the edges of this stuff and not just use it as a glorified search engine, but really see how, I mean, there was a great piece of research, Joanne, that I think really informs, I think, the mindset of where we need to be. And this research was about scientific researchers. And what they found was that when the researchers used AI, they had more discoveries, they had more patents, they had more product launches. Okay, that makes sense. But here's the thing that was so interesting. It widened the gap between the best researchers and the average researchers. So if you use AI, it can make you better than your best. And it widens the gap between you and your competitors. So, yeah, it is scary, and yeah, it's changing a lot. But it's a massive opportunity. And and like some of the things I'm doing, like, I love art, right? But I'm not an artist. I dabble in it, but I'm not an artist. And I can create generative AI art that makes me happy. It makes me proud. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm really creating art that makes me joyful. And so it unleashes this new capability for people who can't write can become writers, and people who aren't artists can become artists, and people who have never made music before can make music. And so it's time, it's a great time of magic and joy as well as fear.
One of the great phrases in the book, and you references, is the pandemic of dull. And I think we're all becoming very sensitized to copy that is created by AI. So it's a real battle of human versus bot, right? So there is a place for our original writing, would you say? And even as an author and a multiple author, should we resist the temptation to get our copy from AI, or should we use it in particular circumstances?
Someone someone had a good analogy the other day. They said using AI to do your writing is like bringing store-bought cookies to a bake sale.
Yeah, I've been known to do this.
So it's convenient, it's fast, it might even taste good, but it's not really what you want. It's not really what you expect. And you're not going to win any blue ribbons. Um, so I think the thing that makes any of us different is, and we do have to be different. I mean, everybody, if you got to rise above the meh, you got to rise above the all this noise in the world to create your own signal. And really, the only choice we have is to have the courage to add our own story, our own experiences to our content. And that's that's not necessarily easy to do because it does take some courage, but it's really the only choice we have. When ChatGPT came out a few years ago, I mean, I immediately recognized, oh my gosh, this is going to change everything. And I called up a friend of mine, this famous tech analyst, Shelley Palmer. I said, Shelley, what do you think about this? He said, I am absolutely terrified. He said, I've blogged every day for the last 15 years. And I asked ChatGPT to write a blog post in my voice, and it created a perfect blog post in 3 seconds. I am 80% replaced. Now, on the surface, that is terrifying. But the more important question to ask is, what is that 20%? And that 20% is his personal brand, a personal brand that he has established by showing up every day for 15 years, giving his generous ideas and thoughts and opinions and his stories to the world. And no matter what happens in the world of AI, Shelley has nothing to worry about because we will always need a human to turn to in this world of deep fakes and misinformation to say, help us figure this out. What's true? What's real? What do we do next? And, I feel the same way. I mean, I've built an audience that trusts me. I actually have added a badge to my blog posts that say 100% human content. So to assure people that this is me, it's always me, and you can count on that. And so that is the role of the human content in this world, is to build that trust. It's one of the last forms of defense that we have against AI.
And it's interesting, that idea of what is your 20% uniqueness that you can bring in the age of AI. And it reminds me of one of your previous books, Known, which is a series of stories and case studies of people who have had phenomenal success just on the back of telling their story and being willing
100, yeah,
to put themselves out.
exactly. Yeah. And it's
And
interesting that you bring that up because there's, if you like read my books in order, it kind of like unveils my thinking over time, right?
oh,
It kind of does all fit together. And so the in a couple years, it's the 10th anniversary of that book. And the book
wow.
is still beloved. It's still a bestseller. And as far as the process in the book, I nailed it. I wouldn't change a thing. But I'm thinking about doing a new edition of the book because in this world of AI, it's it's even more important. We should all have a sense of urgency about this because it's the last thing we have left. That's the only thing AI can't take away from us. It might be able to reproduce our voice and our content and, do better art and do better everything, but it can't reproduce our humanity, our personal brand.
And it's the first book that I've come across, and maybe you can tell me it's the first book of its kind that has an AI cover. Tell
Oh,
our
right.
about that.
Well, I'm very proud of that. It is the first book of its kind. And, I was challenged because to write a book called Audacious, the book better be audacious. And so the thing I love about this, Joanne, is that the book itself demonstrates the concepts in the book. So the framework in the book is very simple. It says, okay, what is a marketing story? Well, it's the narrative, it's where you tell it, and it's who tells the story. And if you disrupt one of those elements, then you're starting to create something audacious. You're trying to create something different and new that someone hasn't seen before. So, my book cover, the only thing on the cover is a QR code. And when you take your phone and you click through and hover over the book, what happens is the book cover changes, it morphs. And what we did is we uploaded the book into AI and we uploaded some sample art so it would kind of come up with the same sort of color palette and abstract feel. And we said, turn the stories from the book into abstract art. And so that's what locks in when you hit the QR code, the book cover morphs, it shifts and changes. We call it the infinity cover because it's never going to be the same way twice. In fact, we're still adding stories to it so that if you look at it, a month from now, it's going to be even different than it is today.
And I have received my copy of Audacious and I have seen the multiple covers. So I'll do a little video and share it on my social for the listeners. But I've been buying your books for over a decade, Mark, and I was so excited when I got an email from Amazon or probably from you to say that your latest title was out. But if you were to write a sequel to Audacious in a couple of years, what would it be? What are your predictions?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think I think the next book project will be the update of Known, maybe, a new edition of Known, just because I've I've taught so many classes on personal branding. I've done so much personal coaching on personal branding that I learned a lot. I learned where people get stuck and maybe where we need to tweak a few things. And again, it's the idea of personal branding in the context of AI, which is um, you know, I, one of the things is that this book only addresses part of the problem, part of the solution, let's say. Um, we talked about this idea of rising above the noise by doing something different and disruptive and unexpected. That is certainly what we need to do because, like I said, competence is not going to cut it anymore. It just isn't. We also talked about personal brand. I mean, that's part of it too, right? The new book covers like word of mouth marketing. I mean, that's a piece of it. Another thing I've been I hint at this a little bit in the new book is that the things that humans, there's always going to be a place for art, human art. Human art is an expression of the human experience, and AI, it'll be able to mimic that. It'll create some really cool stuff, but the things that we cherish the most, even if it's a picture that one of our children drew or a piece of furniture handed down from our parents, the things that we love the most in this world are attached to a human and an expression of our humanity. And so I think that is also going to be, strangely enough, I think our marketing is going to move that way too, is that our marketing has to approach art. It has to approach something that's unique and like only one person could do this, which is what makes me love it. So it's an interesting idea. It's an interesting idea that I hinted at in this book. So there are a lot of different paths, where the future could go. And I don't know. I think, like I said, I don't have a plan to write a book. I have to like see what's happening in the world and like what is that big question? What is that big problem? And how can I uniquely solve it? And that's what will make a good book.
Okay, so what about leaders who are not adapting to AI and are a little bit reluctant to go all in? What's your advice to them? Because we have competent and proactive and ambitious marketing and comms people in agencies across the world, but they are working with one hand behind their back because their leadership is going, not now, not right now.
Well, I think there's a couple issues in there. It's actually a very deep question. And, one is about cultural change and taking risks. And one issue also might be like the economics of AI. So, I mean, there is a lot of hype about AI. And I think a good leader should sort of assess before jumping into everything. There's, you know, One big hurdle, Joanne, is some of the legal implications of AI, right? I mean, I know the big brands I work with have just said no, just no, because it hasn't settled out. There's too much to risk. There's too much to lose. So there might be some good uh, logical reasons to just take a moment before jumping in. So that's one issue. Now the other issue is cultural change, where people just say, no, I don't want to change. I don't want to do anything new. And that's a bigger issue. I do talk about that near the end of the book. There is a chapter called The Most Important Chapter in the Book. And the reason I named it that is because, through, up until this point in the book, I've been saying, we've got to take risks, and we've got to be bold, and we've got to be audacious. And I know by the end of the book, people are thinking, I'm all in. That's great. But how do I do this without losing my job? And so we got to talk about that. Again, I'm a practical person. And so in this book, we look at it from the perspective of someone who's leading a company. We look at someone who's part of a company, and we look at it from the perspective of an outsider, of someone who's like a freelancer or a consultant. How do you get people to, adopt change? Now, the good news is most leaders, they want to be competitive. They don't want to fall behind. And as I said, there might be good reasons to, take a pause. Let's take a beat here, see what this AI is really all about. But if the real reason people don't want to change is because of fear, fear of disruption and, fear of, upsetting somebody, fear of taking risks, then that is the time you've got to really question what you're doing. Because if you just live in a world of fear, everybody's gonna pass you by. Because I mean, to rise above the noise, you are going to have to be disruptive. You are going to have to do something audacious. And if you can't break those shackles and move to that next level, the AI is just going to wipe you out.
Well, Mark Schaefer, it's such a pleasure to talk to you again. And thank you so much for writing this book and all the previous titles, because I, for one, as a 2 decade plus marketing and comms person, really looks to you to see where I should be going in my career. So this is a book that every marketer must read. Where can they get it?
Well, it's on Amazon is the easiest place to get it, and it's available in a paperback, a hardback, an ebook, and also an audiobook, which I have narrated. So yeah, so that would be great. And if you want to learn more about me, my website is Businesses Grow. You don't have to remember my name. If you just remember Businesses Grow, you can find all my books. I mean, Joanne has mentioned a couple different books here, and you can find my blog and my podcast and ways to connect with me on social media.
Well, listen, thank you so much. When I asked you to come on the podcast, your response was immediate, and I really appreciate it. And wishing you well and continued success, Mark.
Thank you, Joanne.